Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see you. My name is Dustin Cormier. Welcome to How to Rock Astrology. Today we're going to continue our reading of Light on Life by Robert Svodoba and Hart to Fouw. We're still on Chapter 1, talking about the origins of Jyotish. Our heading for today, we just talked about the styles of Jyotish, different things outside of natal astrology. Now we're looking at styles of Jyotish, referring to the different styles, essentially, of natal astrology and the root conceptions of different natal astrology techniques, which have come to be the basis of modern Jyotish. So, although properly speaking, Jyotish should involve the planets and constellations, Jyotishis also often resort to three allied, non-celestial disciplines: Sankhya Shastra, which is numerology; Samudrika Shastra, which is divination through interpretation of body parts using their shapes, relative size, and markings; and Hasta Samudrika Shastra, which is palmistry, a specialized branch of Samudrika Shastra. It's not unusual for a Jyotishi to predict travel only from the palm of the hand, forecast a career change based on the numerology of a birth date, or predict marital success from the size of a toe. That's kind of neat. Palmistry is used so pervasively by Jyotishis that it and Jyotish are commonly known in India as sister sciences. 5 principal styles of Jyotish have evolved, each of which retains its distinctive character and capabilities, though they have been repeatedly cross-pollinated over the centuries. Each was originated by a famous mythical or historical figure who wrote or is reputed to have written its seminal treatise, and each has been enriched by inspired commentaries. It's how a lot of Indian astrological texts work. Some genius, insightful rishi transmits an as of yet undiscovered facet of astrology, and then they get enriched by commentaries further down the road. Aspiring Jyotishis in India are still taught to be as deferential to the classical authorities who authored the texts they study as those authors were to their own teachers. As Maharshi, the great rishi, the word Maharshi means great rishi. So, as Maharshi Parashara, the reputed author of Brihat Parashara Shastra, who is regarded by many as the father of Jyotish, as he states in the conclusion of that work, Brihat Parashara, "The knowledge I have imparted to you is that same science of Jyotish that Lord Brahma, the creator, spoke to Narada, the divine messenger, and that Narada spoke to Shaunaka and other sages, from whom I received it. I have narrated it to you as I learnt it from them." Epic part of the narrative of Vedic philosophy there, which manifests itself through through Parashara, the rishi. So, the lineage of a tradition of Jyotish begins when the living principles of the Jyotir Vidya become embodied via a seer's consciousness, and these principles are then embellished over generations by human Jyotishis who are possessed by the Jyotir Vidya, who see the light. A tradition's seer, who has one foot on the celestial plane and the other here on earth, helps to maintain the bonds between deep human knowledge and its sacred origins, and those who accept students mold them mercilessly into fit receptacles for the Jyotir Vidya, that the lineage may continue unbroken. All sincere Jyotishis regard themselves as custodians of their lineages and revere all those who have come before them, which is why they did it at the start of this book with the dedications. The chief styles of Jyotish are Nadi Jyotish, Parashari Jyotish, Parashara, Jaimini Jyotish, which I'm a huge advocate of, Tantric Jyotish, and Tajika Jyotish. Now we're going to go through all of these right now, which this book, by the way, is kind of a combination of all these different things. Although ultimately I believe that in this book the authors favor, or at least focus on, Parashara. In any case, the first one on our first type of Jyotish, the style of Jyotish on our list, is Nadi Jyotish. No one knows when Nadi Jyotish originated. Legend has it that India's rishis became so adept at Jyotish that they were able to generate the horoscopes of people who are not yet born, and to predict salient patterns in their lives. After these rishis had produced a river of such birth charts, the gods, alarmed at this challenge to their omniscience, sent a great fire which destroyed most of the collection. Those fragments of the nadis that survived are handed down from parent to child in certain families of Indian astrologers who act as their custodians. These Nadi remnants are identified by their purported authors. Among the best known are the Bhrigu Nadi, Parashara Nadi, Shuka Nadi, and Chandra Nadi. Each Nadi collection is reputed to contain the horoscopes of only those individuals who are destined to consult that particular collection. Our experience tends to bear this out. When complete, a Nadi reading traditionally consists of 4 parts. The first, known as Bhavafala, deals with issues like career, marriage, children, health, and finances. The second, Yoga Khanda, gives precise predictions, usually involving political, social, or scientific attainments, based on certain planetary combinations found in that horoscope. The third part, Karma Khanda, details specific occurrences in a previous life, misdeeds for the most part, whose effects create obstructions in this life. The last section, Shanti Khanda, prescribes remedial measures to mitigate or nullify any lingering undesirable results accruing from past life misdemeanors. Since the methodology of a Nadi reading remains a secret which is guarded closely by those custodians for whom the Nadis are a family business, the Nadis yield their principles grudgingly to outsiders who try to research them. One curious fact: while a Nadi reading is often strikingly precise regarding one's past, predictions of the future rarely achieve the same success at detail, though they are usually broadly accurate. Now, next up on this train is the very important one and only Parashari Jyotish. Parashari Parashari, or this might actually be pronounced Parashari, refers to the tradition of Jyotish, enunciated by Parashara in his great work Brihat Parashara Hora. In its current form, this treatise contains, I feel like I still got to get this down. I got to get an authority on it, but a lot of people call it Parashara. I'm going to stick with that because I should feel like I should stick to one. I digress. So Parashara was mostly known by his book Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. In its current form, this treatise contains in its 97 chapters a total of over 2,000 verses dealing with natal astrology. Other famous classical works, including Saravali, Jataka Parijata, and Phaladipika, are elaborations of the Parashari system, which is the form of Jyotish that is most widely practiced today. Parashara's book focuses predominantly on the Parashari tradition of interpreting natal horoscopes. Oh, I see. My apologies. This book, the reading that we're doing today, Light on Life, this book focuses predominantly on the Parashari tradition of interpreting natal horoscopes. I think it sucks that it's missing Jaimini, because Jaimini, I think, is like the Atmakarka and all of that. Everything implied by that, I think, is a huge, important part of astrology for your future reference. We do not know when Parashari Jyotish took on its present form, or which parts of it were laid down by the Rishi Parashara and which were added by learned commentators. It's also impossible to know whether Parashari Jyotish solidified earlier or later than the time of Varahamihira. It's also impossible to tell whether Parashari Jyotish solidified earlier or later than the time of Varahamihira, the court astrologer who, according to one tradition, served the famous emperor Chandragupta II, probably about 4th century after death, who was a great patron of science and art. Renowned for his erudition, wisdom, and verified predictions, Varahamihira wrote voluminously on all subjects of Jyotish. One of his 6 principal treatises, the most widely read today, are the Brihad Jataka, which deals with birth or natal astrology, and the Brihat Samhita, which is chiefly concerned with various forms of divinations. Without knowing whether the current system ascribed to Parashara preceded or followed Varahamihira, we cannot know how much one stream of information influenced the other, but it is a fact that there is no Varahamihiri tradition that is independent of the Parashari tradition. Varahamihira is still, however, greatly respected as the author of the best-known works of Jyotish composed by a non-seer. Because a seer, the rishi, is a different level. It's a direct experiencer of the reality of the Veda. It's a true eye of the Veda. Whereas a non-seer, like Varahamihira, is using his intellect and intuition and clever ability to communicate understandings, is Mercury. Parashara was using more of his Jupiter, true knowledge, a true instinctive grasp of this, using the superconscious of knowledge that eternally is. Varahamihira is more of a Mercury patron. Mercury being the communicator of that data and knowledge through some specific guise, some specific clarifying, consolidating language. Now, that was Parashara's Jyotish, which is, again, what the majority of this book is founded on. Next comes a very important figure to consider for your future studies in Jyotish. If you keep watching my channel, you'll kind of hear me talk about Jaimini stuff quite a bit. Maharshi Jaimini, a great Vedic seer, is believed by some to have written the Jaimini Sutras, a work which forms the foundation for this system. Today, a relatively small minority of Jyotishis in India practice the Jaimini style of Jyotish, though this fascinating style of interpretation is held in high esteem by many others who, knowingly or unknowingly, utilize some of its principles to augment Parashari Jyotish. Bingo. While some of the fundamental principles of Jaimini Jyotish seem to have been adopted from the Parashari system, Jaimini Jyotish so developed these that they now little resemble the system which may have been their source. Jaimini Jyotish is also filled with interpretational principles which appear nowhere in Parashara's work. It is possible that some commentator developed Jaimini Jyotish from Parashara's system and then appended Maharshi Jaimini's name to his creation. Indian commentators or innovators in ancient times commonly ascribed authorship of their works to renowned historical or mythical figures in order to enhance their chances of acceptance by scholars. That's some dirty stuff. Thus, although the astrologer Kalidasa, who wrote the Jyotish text known as the Uttara Kalamrita, was almost certainly different from the poet and dramatist Kalidasa, who wrote some of India's greatest literature, many still adamantly believe that these two might well have been the same man. It may also be that Jaimini's inspiration created the egg of Jaimini Jyotish, an egg which first required Parashara's fertilization before it could develop on its own. It may even be that a Parashari commentator extracted from Jaimini Jyotish those few chapters that the Parashari and Jaimini styles share, and added them to the Brihat Parashara Hora, as if they had been there from the beginning. We are unlikely ever to know for sure. That's an interesting take. But it does kind of show you the importance of Jaimini to Parashara and vice versa. That definitely gives a glimpse of it if what was just described is the case. Oh, I just got a blast of air in my eye somehow just now. But the train keeps a-rolling, folks. The next style of Jyotish that we're going to discuss is Tantric Jyotish. If the origins of the Parashari and Jaimini systems are unclear, then Tantric Jyotish's roots are utterly, unknown. In fact, neither Tantric Jyotish nor Tantra, its parent, can be really readily defined. Like Ayurveda, Tantra is said to be an offshoot of the Atharva Veda, the fourth of the four Vedas. But as yet, no one has a clear idea of the origins of the Atharva Veda, a hymnal filled with occult chants and charms. In an astrological context, The word tantric implies a mystical and intuitive approach and attitude towards Jyotish. Tantra calls for sacrificial rites, and a practitioner of Tantric Jyotish tends to rely on internally derived information over that information collected from external sources, arriving at startling, correct conclusions via magical techniques. Intuitive, internally derived information, almost like tarot reading type of direction. That's the direction that Tantra goes in. These techniques include, but are not limited to, the observation and interpretation of omens, the observation and analysis of the Jyotishi's breathing patterns at the moment a question is asked, the interpretation of a client's speech patterns and actions, the encouraging of spontaneous or forced visions, clairvoyance, clairaudience, or astral travel is considered tantric, the use of information received from ethereal beings, the use of substances or techniques to induce such paranormal or psychic phenomena as the charming of objects or people, past life readings, miraculous cures, and the granting of boons, and the use of intense spiritual practices to bring the powers of nature under one's direct and personal control. Oy, stretch my jaw out. Many systems of divination around the world also employ such techniques. But few who do past life readings or trance channeling are practicing Tantric Jyotish. Tantric methods of divination are typically performed within the framework of Jyotish's model, a framework which helps to focus, enhance, and structure them. It is this process of standardization and correlation which makes astrological the collection of shamanic techniques that is Tantric Jyotish. So I'm going to say it again. It is this process of standardization and correlation which makes astrological the collection of shamanic techniques that is Tantric Jyotish. For example, while omens may be interpreted in many ways, Jyotish tends to interpret them according to time when they happen and space where they happen. An omen which occurs in a westerly direction is likely to cause a Jyotishi to think first of Saturn, who rules the west, and then to consider Saturn's implications on the question at hand. Another example. People in many cultures have been able to gain control over certain classes of spirits, but most do so haphazardly, and are often unaware of what sort of spirit they have harnessed. Jyotish, however, can determine by examination of the horoscope whether or not a person can succeed at such an endeavor, and, if so, what classes of spirit they will be able to summon, when in their lives they will be able to succeed, and at what precise moment they should begin their rituals in order to succeed. So, our last limb today is Tajika Jyotish. This is another one that I've heard of before, but this one in particular I haven't had as much experience with either, although I hear the name and the word used in modern astrological circles. So, Tajika Jyotish. Because Nilakantha Daivagnya was the prime proponent of this form of Jyotish, Its other common name is Nilakantha Tajika. Though this school is a relatively late development, Nilakantha states that his book was composed in AD 1587. It has, since its introduction into India from the Arabs, Tajika is a Sanskrit term for an Arab, it's become thoroughly Indianized. This form of Jyotish often feels more familiar to the Western astrologer than do the other styles, since Arabic astrological methods are also figured prominently in the West. Very cool. For example, exact aspects, especially including the sextile, square, trine, and opposition, are as intrinsic to this system as they are to Ptolemaic astrology, the source of Western astrology. Probably the most famous contribution of the Tajika school to the other styles of Jyotish is the technique of the solar return, which Indian Jyotishis have named Varshafala, the result of the year. Though Varshafala is not part of the Parashari tradition, it may one day succeed in becoming so if it sends its roots sufficiently deep into the Jyotirvidya. Wow, psychedelic. It's interesting how he speaks to these limbs as being these living Vidya spirits reaching into each other. I do love this author's work. I love the writing in this book. And it's, like I said, it's kind of nice to get the guts, the roots, to see your own natal astrological thing in context with what it could possibly be, in the all-encompassing science that is Jyotish. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was me talking about the styles of Jyotish. Next episode, as we come along, we're going to be we're going to be in chapter 2 now. We're going to be talking about the philosophy of Jyotish. And now we've kind of gotten the underbelly of this introduction out of the way. Now it's time to get into some good old nitty-gritty good stuff, getting into the philosophy and what is the root essence of the meaning of karma and dharma and existence and the alchemical vessel of human evolution, all that delicious stuff. See you there, folks. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the show, and keep your eyes peeled because we got more coming. Thank you so much for watching with me and reading these readings with me. It's been very lovely. Talk to you soon.